little bit about our speaker. So Dr. Kate Darcy is a Senior Research Fellow in the International Center at the University of Bedfordshire. She has been working in education for many years as a youth worker, teacher, and researcher, and she's been working on numerous projects related to social justice and also with different marginalized groups, including children and young people. And now I'm giving the floor to Kate, and I hope you will enjoy the webinar. Kate, we cannot hear you yet.
Okay.
We can now.
Yes. Okay. Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Just checking you can hear me. If you can't, again, type a message in the box. But if you, it looks like by what you're saying, you can hear me, which is fabulous. So first of all, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. I'm going to be talking about the LEAP project. It's called LEAP because we have a very long title, but it's basically about supporting children and young people affected by sexual violence in Europe. And the way we're going to support these young people is by strengthening and facilitating participatory practice. And I'm just going to take you through these slides. As you were informed, you will have the chance to ask questions at the end. I also believe that we have a couple of people who attended the training who are joining us, which is fabulous. And if you wanted to add anything from your perspective at the end in terms of your experience of the 4-day training, which is the focus of today, please feel free to do that. So just to provide you with a little overview of what's going to be covered, I'm going to share information about our 4-day course, which we're piloting across different countries in Europe. And the focus is on participatory practice. And I'll take you through the details of this. I also would like to invite you to be part of a knowledge network to share future findings from our European work. This will include this particular project, and we'd also like to be interested in anything that you're doing. And within the centre, we also have other European work which is going on, which we'd be happy to share with you. So just to provide a little bit of an introduction, I work for the International Centre. We're based at the University of Bedfordshire, and some of our principles are listed on the slide above. So really, we're very committed to increasing understanding and improving responses to child sexual exploitation, violencing and trafficking. And we are involved in a wide range of different projects. And this European project is one of those, which I'll be talking about today. We are particularly interested in collaborative and partnership-based approaches and meaningful and ethical engagement of children and young people, and ensuring that they do have a say in matters that affect them. So a little bit about the project. As I explained, the International Centre, we are currently coordinating a 2-year LEAP project. So this has been funded by the European Commission, and my colleague did very well, shall we say, to obtain the funding from the European Commission for this 2-year project. The main aims is to improve knowledge and develop skills and understanding of a child's right focus to safe and ethical participatory practice. So what we're interested in doing is focusing particularly on the way that children and young people participate in services who provide support for them as young people who are affected by sexual violence or at risk of sexual violence, but also how we can help them have their voice heard, not only in services but also as individuals, so for their own agency. So one of the aims of the project is to develop confidence among practitioners who are working with these young people. So we are working with 4 partner countries. These are based in the Netherlands, Bulgaria, Romania, and Hungary. We also have a partner in the UK who are Bernardos, and it's important to let you know that Bernardos were the people who actually organised this training. So the UK pilot, they brought together 20 participants who were going to be part of this training. Sorry, I'm just having a slight problem moving the slide on, so if someone else can do that, that would be great. Thank you. So together, the aim of what we're doing is we are developing this 4-day training course for specialist providers, and this will eventually be developed into an e-learning program. As I explained, Bernardos were sort of central in really bringing together these specialist services in the UK, and the attendees were mainly from the voluntary sector organisations. We're also organising and facilitating communities of practice in each country. So in the UK, the people who took part in the training will become a community of practice. This will happen in each country. So once we've delivered training in the Netherlands, which happens at the end of June, again, a community of practice will be formed. And the details of this we're happy to share with you if you would be interested in joining. We'll also be developing a 3-day training program for youth facilitators. These are going to be a small number of young people who are going to co-deliver skills-based programs to other young people in their own countries. And these young people are going to be identified by their own country partners. And finally, we're going to be supporting creative projects. So once the youth facilitators have trained children and young people, they're going to develop their own projects, and these will be entirely sort of designed by them to raise awareness about how we combat sexual violence, and they'll be sharing these with a wider audience. Next slide, please. So the first activity of the main project activity began in April, and this was really, as I explained, to pilot this evidence-based training programme in the UK. The UK was the first place where we're piloting it, and the other countries will follow, and I'm going to share now some details of this training. Next slide, please. Okay, I've now got it back. Okay, so the first day, Monday the 25th of April, 28 people came together in Middlesbrough, which is in the north of England, at the Mima Art Centre. So we stayed there for 4 days, consecutive days, and the aim was to undertake this training together. It was a great opportunity to be with people for a whole 4-day period, which was quite lucky really, because many training courses are very short, so it allowed us to really learn together over a long period of time. So the aims of the training were to enable these 20 people to really improve their knowledge and skills of child's right participation, and to develop their confidence about thinking about participatory practice, but doing it also when they go back to their own organisations. The aim is really to undertake the training and then become champions in advocating participation. And by a champion, we're thinking that they will then share this with their colleagues and be an example of good practice regarding participation. Participants developed their own action plans to embed and improve their own work. And like I said, to go back to their own organisations and champion this work. So the aim of the training, because obviously it's the subject of participation, it was really important that it was very participatory itself. So what we didn't want was people sitting in front of sort of PowerPoint presentations for 4 days with the person who was delivering the training just speaking at them and no opportunities for participation. So at this point, it's important to let you know that the programme was designed by Abby Billinghurst, who is in this picture. She has her back to us with the pink jumper on, but she was the person who we commissioned to put together this training. She has a lot of experience of working with young people who are affected by sexual violence, and also delivering training to young people and professionals at the same time. So she put together a very comprehensive 4-day programme which involved a lot of activities that were interactive and creative, and we spent a lot of time working in groups, having group discussions and learning from each other. Each activity was designed so that practitioners could take these back to their own organisations and use them within their own services. So they might use the activities for work with young people, or they might use them for their to work with their colleagues back at work. So I'm just going to share some of the highlights really of the training. So I mean, one of the outstanding highlights was that young people were part of leading a session. This was on the second day. The young people who you can see in the photograph sitting at the front, they joined us for the entire session, and this was a real privilege. The Bernardes Sikos, who I explained, brought together the participants. These were some young people that they were already working with, and they had put together this a series of activities that the young people did with us. So in the morning, the young people delivered a range of activities focused on the rights of the child. So we looked at some of the legislation and how we can make sure, or in what ways are children's rights actually embedded, and what are the challenges around that, and what might we do to make sure that young people's rights can be better promoted. We also did some ice-breaking activities and group exercises with young people to look at inequality of young people more generally. So these activities were great, that they were young person led. And in the afternoon, we had an open session where young people were able to talk to us about actually what participation really means for them. The document we were working on in terms of children's rights, the links at the bottom of this slide, if you're interested in looking at that. So as part of the young people's session, here's a question for you while we have a look at these photos. But this is something that the young people were showcasing in their session. And maybe once you've had a chance to fill this in, then we will watch a short video from the young people actually presenting. We'll then return back to the presentation. So in a minute we should be able to watch the video of the young people.
What we didn't know before we started with Bernardo's, we didn't know about CSE as much as what we do now. And we had the missing pieces on this mask is confidence, awareness, lost. Yeah, so by joining Bernardo's and participating within these groups that we've been involved in, we now have a greater understanding of what's missing within society, and we're allowed to project that to young people and professionals like yourselves.
Now that we've learned about Bernardo's, I'm pretty sure that we're all telling people what we do and what CSE is and what it's about. And just if they see how interesting it is, they'll probably want to know more, so that's probably why we do things like this.
So this is our participation. Filling in the blanks that people don't know. Trying to get them away from that wall that stops them from reaching out and allowing people to talk about it.
Okay, so that's just a very short clip from the young person's presentation, and what you could hopefully hear from that session was that they use these masks to talk to people about the different inequalities or the different assumptions people make of young people. So some of you had a go at answering the question. So if we look at the masks, the red one with the bomb is a ticking time bomb, so the young person's about to explode. We're not quite sure they're kind of dangerous. The puzzle face is obviously, the young person is a puzzle to adults. They don't understand them. The green face is a joker, so the young person who's always joking around, who from the outside may always seem like they're just fooling around, but inside that there might be lots more going on. And there's the brick wall, which is the grey one, and Elvis Presley, sort of cool guy. So I think these masks work very effectively for Bernardo's in helping young people talk about some of the difficulties young people experience in working with adults. So as the young people explained how they work with services, they also explained about the benefits to them. They talked about improving their own confidence and how important they felt that it was that they talked to young people, because other young people, they enjoy hearing things from young people themselves. It means more to them. So I'm just going to provide another example of an activity that we explored as part of the training. This was called low-hanging fruit. What we really wanted to make sure as part of the training that people actually would go away understanding how they would do participation. And the reason for this is because we often talk about participation, but lots of people don't actually know what that means, or people will have different meanings for what participation is, and how to go about it can actually be quite challenging. So the way this activity worked was that each group had a large bit of paper and they drew an outline of a tree, and they used that tree to action plan different areas of work. So they were given different themes to focus on. These are listed on the slide. So it was creating safe spaces, group work with high-risk young people, because in our experience this is the one thing that people are very worried about, how to bring groups of young people together safely, and managing the risks of that. The third one was about how we actually embed participatory practice. So how do we make sure that we don't just listen to young people, but actually that we're making sure that they're having their voice heard about how the service runs. They might be influencing policy at service level or local policies. And finally, accessibility for and representation of young people. So how do we make sure that actually participation is accessible for young people, and that we represent a diversity of young people that we are working with or who are living in our local communities. So basically participants had little pieces of paper which were shaped like fruit and leaves, and they wrote down all the things that needed to be done in order to be able to achieve these. So the lower the pieces of fruit, the easier the jobs were to complete, because what obviously is very important is that these things feel achievable, that we have tasks that we can do that are manageable, but also sometimes more challenging things that we need to work towards. So some of the themes we asked people to think about were the sort of emotional and welfare support for young people. How do we ensure that? How do we manage risk without preventing participation taking place? Because that is one of the things that can happen. We're so concerned of the risks that we don't actually bring people together or allow young people to participate. Ongoing and informed consent, that young people are consenting to their own participation and clear about what that means. And dealing with disclosure is important, because obviously when you do bring young people together, there may be times when people want to share personal information. They may want to disclose, and it's very important that practitioners know how to deal with that in a safe and ethical way. So I won't read through all of these because you can come back to the slides at a later date, but these are some of the themes that are quite useful to consider when we're thinking about how we do participation. So here's another short question for you in terms of the champion part, because that's the next thing I'm just going to share with you. One of the activities where we talked to participants about becoming champions. What did a champion actually look like? Great, so I can see that you are answering, and all of the suggestions that you're making are the kinds of things that that people were discussing. Trust being very important, and the listening aspect. Absolutely, not having your own agenda, actually listening to the young person's agenda. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide, where I'll just explain the activity for the champions. So the ideal champion activity was where we wanted to help people think about how they were going to become a champion. We didn't want to just sort of say to them, right, well, we're expecting you to do this, without providing some clear instructions and some time to discuss this in groups. So people drew large silhouettes of bodies on pieces of paper, and there's a photograph on your right where you can see how this worked. And the idea was that people thought about the skills, the attitudes, and the knowledge. So we were looking at all of those different qualities, and these were then shared back to the wider group, and the wider group then provided feedback on what they felt was important from their own experience, and what was maybe challenging in terms of championing participation. I think one of the key highlights, or the main points to note, is that it was really amazing being with 20 plus people who were committed to participation. I think for them it was very motivating. Feedback suggested this because it can be quite isolating if you're maybe the only person in your organisation who is championing participation. So it was a really great opportunity to get people together. And you know, the training was important in terms of learning from the presenter about how we do participation, but equally it was learning from each other that was really important to people who were on the training course. So communities of practice, which I spoke about at the start, these are opportunities for these people to stay together, because we didn't want to just bring them together for the 4-day training and then that be the end of it. We wanted this to be an ongoing learning opportunity. So the next phase of the project in that respect are developing communities of practice, and we've set up a sort of communication via the Child Hub website, and there will also be face-to-face meetings organised in different countries for people to attend. And the idea will be that people who develop their action plans, which participants did on the final day, they will come back and reflect their actions, how these are working out, and sharing their own stories of change, what has happened. And in terms of the wider project, the country partners, as I suggested, will now be delivering this course. So we've piloted it in the UK. We have made adaptations to the programme from the feedback that participants sent us. And this is going to now be used in the Netherlands, Bulgaria and Romania. I imagine it will be the programme will look slightly different across each of the 4 countries, and then we will bring all of that together at the end and develop this into a web-based programme which will be accessible for people all over Europe. And the other point I wanted to make was that we also want to develop a network of international organisations who are engaged with and interested in participation to exchange knowledge. And you are very warmly invited to join this network. If you would like to do that, you can email me and I will share your details, and we'll add these to a database so that we can share further work about the project as it continues. It goes on now until November 2017. Okay, so now is really time for you to have any questions, any comments, and I can answer what I can, and if anyone after that would like to say something about their own experience of the training, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kate. I can see you have a few questions on your slide, and we would really appreciate if people could use a few minutes and write a little bit to answer these questions in the chat box. We can take a couple of minutes for that. And then also, if you have any question towards Kate, please feel free to ask them. Kate, I can see a question from one of the participants. Sylvie is asking, how are the communities of practice organized? Like, do they meet regularly, for example?
Thanks, Sylvie, for your question. The communities of practice, each country, there are 6 meetings across the project duration. So really between now and next November, there will be 6 opportunities to get together. These are only in-country communities of practice. So, for example, the UK, Seacos, Barnardo's, have sent round an invitation to all the people who took part in the training and invited them to come together on a number of dates to share, as I explained, kind of how they're getting on and their progress. So this is how it will be organised. But I imagine that this group is open and that every country would be very interested in other people joining on top of the people who did the training if they were interested. And I've just seen that Yvette has joined us, which is great. So I don't know if you have any more questions, or maybe people who attended the training or who are country partners would like to say anything. Okay, I can see in the chat box there's some more questions and comments, which hopefully you can follow as well. So we have joining us we have the Dutch project coordinator and also Judith, who was part of the training and who's going to be developing the resources for the web-based training. And Judith is asking me if what was the most positive, unexpected thing of the training. I'm not sure if there was anything that was really unexpected. I think what was very reassuring was that people did value coming together for 4 days. My concern at the outset was that actually 4 days would be too long. People wouldn't be interested. They would, get fed up, find it difficult to focus for that length of time. But actually, it wasn't like that at all. People were very positive. They found it really beneficial to be able to have that length of time together. So I think that was probably the most sort of reassuring, positive thing for me personally. I've been told I've submitted a question by Angela, but I can't see it. So if you want to share that with me, I'll answer it.
Kate, there is one more question from Sylvie. Do the communities of practice have a specific strategy, or is it mainly to share best practice?
Thank you. That's a really good question. The communities of practice is almost, I suppose, again, we're kind of piloting a process. So we don't have a specific, at the moment, we don't have a specific structure of what this looks like. This is something that I am working on with Yvette, the Dutch partner who's also just recently joined us and has experience of doing communities of practice from other projects. What we will be doing is developing a guide. So by the end of the project, when we have tried out different methods for the communities, then we will produce a guide of how it works. But the basics really are for sort of sharing and participating, learning together. It's quite loosely structured at the moment.
Thank you, Kate. And I can see one more interesting question from Angela. She's asking whether the training takes on board the cultural specific needs of the communities, as this is a major barrier to engagement.
Yeah, really good question. We talked about diversity as part of the training, and in terms of how we can make sure that those young people who are often the hardest to reach can be engaged. So it's hard to kind of answer your question specifically because I don't know exactly which communities you're referring to, but you know there are different communities, sort of cultural community, religious communities, for which bringing together possibly a group of young people to talk about CSE is a real challenge, because there are barriers around wanting to talk about the subject for a start, wanting to actually sort of think that people in their communities are victims. So I think this is a really important question, and I think it's really it was embedded throughout about really thinking about young people's diversity and the inclusion of all young people, not maybe just the ones that we are working with. So that is a challenge for participation, real active participation, and it's centrally important. I can see that there's another question about the ways people from the webinar can join the project. Basically, we'd be really interested in, I imagine there's different ways that you can join. You can join just as a sort of knowledge network member, so we can share information with you about the project. But if you want a more active engagement, depending on what country that you're based in, we could try and link you with the most relevant country. And again, it would be useful to hear in terms of, well, what you can get from it is from sort of following the process of work that we're developing in terms of improving participation. So we would hope that you would learn about the tools you might use, and share some of the learning through the dialogue with different partners.
Okay, thank you very much, Kate. And we have a few more minutes if anybody wants to ask any other questions. Meanwhile, we would like to ask you to evaluate this webinar using the poll you can see on your screens now. Also, I would like to take the opportunity and to mention that we have one more webinar coming this week, where we are going to present the My Destination app, which is an online tool to collect testimonies of children on the move. So in case anybody of you is interested, please feel free to join. You can find the information on the Child Hub website. And thank you very much, Kate, for a wonderful presentation. And I hope you enjoyed the webinar, and we wish you a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.